Hey guys, welcome back to Fourth Wall Reactions. Today I'm taking a moment to take a look back at Series 5 before I go any further with Series 6. I actually have recorded reactions for the first 2 episodes of Series 6. I was thinking, it doesn't matter so much because even though everything is still pretty new, there's consistency. It's the same doctor, same showrunner, same companions. It'll be fine. I can tell that there's going to be more development and things and building upon things in Series 5. So I kind of want to take my look back and do a wrap up and a review before moving any further into Series 6 because they might overlap and run together. I think first and foremost, I have to say that I really enjoyed Series 5. I was really scared, actually, very nervous to move on to a different doctor. I think I wasn't sure when it started that it had also switched showrunners at that time. I didn't know. So I might have been freaking out about that as well, had I known. But mostly I was worried that I might not be as into it since it was a different doctor. And it was a switch. It was a change. But I think overall, once I kind of got used to the new digs, the new setup, the new people, I really had a lot of fun with it. Let's start with the obvious, the new doctor. I really enjoyed Matt Smith as the Doctor. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it did take me a good 3 or 4 episodes to really, truly get used to him. And it was really interesting reading comments and learning that the two-parter, the Angels, that was actually, I guess, the first episodes that were filmed. So those were his first full episodes as the Doctor, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, feel free to correct me. But I think I remember that in the comments section. It was about that time that I really went, wow, he's very, I can totally buy into him as the Doctor at this point. I don't know how much of that was me getting used to him from my perspective over the course of the first, 4 episodes, or just he got the doctorness of the Doctor right off from his perspective and from the production perspective of those being the first episode shot. Those episodes are where I really started to feel like, yeah, this is the Doctor. I get it. And not that he wasn't doctory before. Like those 3 episodes at first were just me acclimating. I think that he is a switch from Tennant, not just in the obvious sense of, yeah, he's not Tennant, but I mean just in demeanor. I think, as we've talked about before, and you guys have said, well, just different qualities are highlighted, and sometimes, these aspects of his personality are stronger than these aspects. I think that he shares a little bit of Eccleston's Doctor. He is sort of more distinctly alien and a bit more separate from his human companions. I felt like David Tennant was really connected with humans. And this Doctor is a little, just not entirely synced up. I think that was really highlighted in the Lodger episode of he just kind of was not just locking in on the humanness of the humans. I think Eccleston had a little bit of that too. Both of them tend to be kind of brusque, or they can be sharp with the people who travel with them. And I guess that was true sometimes of Tennant, but I mean, I think of him with Rose. I think of him with Martha. He could be sharp with Donna, but that's just because they had that back and forth. I don't know if I can explain it just right. Probably not, but I do think that there are moments that remind me of the Ninth Doctor a little bit. And I think it's only fair to compare those two rather than compare anything with Tennant at this point, because I had 3 seasons of Tennant, or series. And I've only one of Matt Smith, and I had only one of Eccleston. So comparing those two seems to make a lot more sense at this point than doing a comparison of Tennant. Maybe I'll do that comparison whenever it is that Matt Smith is done, which I don't know when he is. Please don't tell me. But yeah, I think that I really love, he has this mischievous sense about him, which I really like. And he does seem to be old and young at the same time. And I don't mean physically, because obviously physically he's the baby face and he is the youngest one ever to play him, I think. But he does have a bit of a childlike quality from time to time, or maybe maybe I'm attributing that to sort of an otherworldly quality, but he does seem to me young and old at the same time. I think it's a really clever performance. So far for me, he speaks a little more slowly than Tennant does, which is a blessing for me, for my American ears, because sometimes when Tennant would take off on these like blah, 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 I have to roll this back. I didn't get it. So I'm following him a little bit more. I may not be following Moffat as much as I did RTD, but that's another thing to talk about. I really love his rapport with his companions, not just Amy and Rory, but River Song. We'll get to her too. So yeah, really glad to see him in this role, and looking forward to how it's going to continue to grow and what else I may see from him Doctor-wise. That'll be interesting going forward. And normally I would probably go right into talking about Amy and Rory, but even though they are the official companions, and we're in more episodes, I do believe, but I have to go immediately to River Song.
Hello, sweetie.
Because if I were ranking characters, which I don't think I will yet, because I feel like even though I've done a full series with them, I'm still getting to know them all. Particularly River Song. If I were ranking them, it would be a battle whether or not River and the Doctor were my favorite characters. And normally River would not qualify because she's not a regular. She pops up a lot, which I'm glad. But kind of in the same sense that I couldn't rank Captain Jack as one of my favorites, like top favorites back in series 1 and 2, just because he wasn't in 2, but 3, he just wasn't around all that much. He was very memorable when he was, but he just was a guest. And I guess technically so is Dr. Song, but because she has appeared so much, I would rank her as a tie with the Doctor as my favorite character of the series so far. Seeing her so much really makes me think twice about what I learned about her in the library, although I don't think anything contradicts what I learned about her in the library with Tennant in those episodes, which were some of my favorite episodes, not only of series 4, but of all the Tennant era. She seems different, but not in a contradictory way from how she was at the library. I think it was a very smart thing to introduce her then, give sort of a really generalized background. She's an archaeologist. She's traveling with these people. She knows the Doctor. How much does she know him? And she has this mysterious book. And what does that mean? And everything was spoilers. And she was very mysterious. So there really weren't a whole lot of answers in that episode when she was first introduced. And then, so here, they're able to really expand upon her history and introduce kind of whatever the hell they want to introduce with her, quite frankly. I don't think any of it's contradictory. It's just sort of building upon what we already knew. I think both the character, how she's written, and the actress, how she is portrayed, are incredibly entertaining and very engaging. In the same sense that Captain Jack has been on Doctor Who, but even more personal to the Doctor, obviously. And to us, because I think we know a little bit more about her than Captain Jack of the first series. Well, I don't know. We did find out an awful lot about Captain Jack. Yeah. I love her sense of inappropriate adventure, which I think I said. She's not so reckless, at least at this point. She hasn't been so reckless that it's detrimental or anything, but she does take risks. I love how much she flirts with Matt Smith, and you can kind of see their relationship growing from his standpoint, of like just thinking of the Doctor in series 4, just meeting her and being very cautious because they were in a very precarious situation. They didn't really have time to get to know each other. And I guess in this series, the first time that they met up again was the Angels. They also fairly precarious. But each time they meet, they have like a little more connection, a little more flirtation. It's fun to see that relationship build as they sort of have to suss out where they are with each other. They hop around in a non-linear fashion the next time that we see them in a linear chronological fashion as viewers of the show. Are you meeting the Doctor who's 900, or are you meeting the Doctor who's 1100? Are you meeting him at this point in your life, or are you meeting her at that point in your life? So it's kind of fascinating to see this relationship grow within that context of just like, when the hell are we? So yeah, I really love her. I hope to see a lot more of her going forward, and I think we will. I think the writing is pretty much telling us that we have a lot more story to go with her and figure out exactly what she's all about. I have a theory that it is the Doctor that she shot, but I kind of don't want to speculate in this just because I don't want to tempt you guys into actually answering me. So that's the Doctor. That's River. Matt Smith, Alex Kingston. She's so different from how I, remember her being in ER, which is, of course, where I first saw her. In ER, she was a really strong, her character was very strong and kind of a rule breaker, but it's just totally different vibe than what she has going on as River Song. So it's really fun to see her in this. I'm really enjoying that. Now, Amy.
Who's Amy? You were Amelia.
Yeah, now I'm Amy.
I really like her. I wasn't sure for a while how much I was going to like her. I knew from the first episode, like, okay, she's fine. But I didn't know how much I would grow to like her, I guess. I was kind of worried, kind of in the same sense when I first met Donna in The Runaway Bride and the journey that Donna had taken from her first very screamy, shouty meeting with the Doctor to what they grew to at the end of the episode. I think it was a similar experience that I had meeting Amy, that I just wasn't sure of, like, well, I like her, but I'm not sure how far this will extend. It all depends on how the character grows. And I think what I really loved about Amy was just how perceptive she is. She's just very adept at reading people, which I really enjoy. She was very perceptive about certain things. And I think that quality is very important because it's tough because we didn't really get to know so much about her because of the fact that her memory was being erased or her life was being erased because of the influence of the crack in the wall. So we didn't get to meet her family until the very end. We didn't get to, like these aspects of her life, the kind of aspects that we met with Rose and could kind of learn who Rose was from not only Rose's interaction with the Doctor, but her interaction with her family and Mickey. I just got distracted by thoughts of Mickey. So that was not a way that we could really get to know Amy. So, the only thing that I could go by was how is she interacting with the Doctor? How is she interacting with other people? And I just like that she could kind of see outside of herself and the adventures that she was having and kind of really, read the room, particularly people and creatures like the Beast. So I really enjoy that about her, and I love her enthusiasm. I love the vibe she has with Rory. I think that her attachment, shall we say, to the Doctor is a little inappropriate at times. It was certainly inappropriate when she sort of, tackled him and kissed him. Like, you are engaged to be married. I understand maybe you want one more, like, fling, but it's not appropriate. But I think she does really love Rory, and I think she came to realize that. And initially, I had sort of done a comparison, like, oh, it's kind of like, are we going to have the same vibe as Rose and Mickey had? Because there's, Rory's jealous of the Doctor, and Amy, is kind of crushing on the Doctor. It's like, are we doing this again? But thankfully, it's taking on a really different tone, I think. She genuinely loves Rory, and I do like their vibe together. Whereas with Rose and Mickey, it was clear that Rose was, like, moving on. I could say a lot about that, but we're not here to talk about that. And Rory, I just adore.
Mr. Pond.
How can you not love the centurion who stands there for 2,000 years to protect the woman he loves? That was so beautiful. Such a sucker. I like that he doesn't front and try to, like, pretend he understands things when he doesn't. I like that he's just like, nope, that went past me. Sorry. Can't do it. And I like that he is forging his own relationship with the Doctor. And it's very kind of older brother, younger brother kind of thing. Less rivals and just more, just has kind of a brotherly vibe to me, which is nice. Hopefully the slight vibe that is still left, like Amy talking about kissing the Doctor when she's just married Rory. Hopefully that just remains just a kind of a nice, light, teasing thing that doesn't ever really turn into a serious triangle. If it does, I'll see where it goes, but hopefully that's my hope that it doesn't. So, but I really like the companions. I think it's nice to have that dynamic of a consistent sort of group of people, which we've had, episodes of that in the past, like when it was Martha and Donna and the Doctor, or Mickey and Rose and the Doctor. But this has been, from about halfway through the series, it was a group situation, which I kind of like that dynamic. And then, of course, when Dr. Zong joins them, it's great. And I thought that they had really interesting episodic characters and villains in this series. I really love the idea of, it's like, the future Queen Elizabeth with the 9th, the 10th. So it kind of makes me think of all the, different doctors. and the fact that he keeps having historical run-ins with them. I saw the Queen Elizabeth in the Shakespeare Code. And then he talked about having married Queen Elizabeth, the end of time. What? And now he has this Elizabeth to have run-ins with, and we saw her twice. So I like that continuing idea of that is really cool. And I obviously just loved Vincent Van Gogh. I loved him. The actor who portrayed him was fantastic. The caliber of actors who popped up, just seeing like James Corden before I would have known of him. And then Bill Nye. His cameo was so touching. I loved hearing from you guys about why he was there and his connection to Vincent Van Gogh. Helen McCrory, I didn't even really recognize her immediately. I was like, oh, that's Narcissa Malfoy. But I think that she brought a lot to that role. Speaking of Helen McCrory, I did have a fondness for those aliens, the villains. Just because I'm a real sucker for a vampire tale, and I kind of liked all the little shout outs to Dracula. So I enjoyed that probably more than the episode itself actually warranted, but I love when they reinvent something like that. Very different from the Plasmavore of Series 3. So I like that they can take on sort of something that is a vampiric concept and do it again, but totally differently. So I like that. I really love the lizard people. I know they have a name. I'm not going to remember it. Whenever they introduce somebody from Classic Who, sometimes I feel like, I don't have the whole story, so I just have to take everyone's word. Not everyone's, I do take your word, but, everyone within the story, like the Doctor has to explain who this person is, and okay, I guess, all right, that's who they are. But I really liked that the lizard people, A, took place in a 2-parter, and B, were just really fully explored, I think. So I really enjoyed meeting that sort of Classic Who villain. I have a sense of them not just being like, well, we're just taking a Classic Who villain and sticking it in. I think they really developed them, and I got a sense of them not only being from Classic Who, but being of this Who. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I think in the past, when there have been villains or aliens from Classic Who, sometimes they have felt to me like a little bit of a guest appearance and that I'm kind of missing out on something. And here I felt like they were really fully realized. So I really enjoyed that two-part. Yeah, so just a lot of great appearances. This series for me was really enjoyable just on a character level alone. It was a good time. For those of you who have blessedly sat through one of my series reviews before, here at the episode spectrum, you already know that I don't rank them so much as group them. For anyone who's new, that's what I do. Because I can't, I'm terrible at picking favorites, so I just kind of group them together. Sort of in like a high tier and a middle tier. In my group of like loved it kind of favorites, I really loved the Weeping Angels two-parter. Because they had angels, and they also had River Song. It was just a really well-told story. I was really nervous for Amy. I learned more about the Weeping Angels, learned more about River Song. And as I said before, those were the first episodes that I had come to really accept Matt Smith as the Doctor. So I was just all in at that point. And everything sort of came together at that time to just be so enjoyable. And so those were two of my favorites. I think it's obvious that Vincent and the Doctor really blew me away. Just from that point of Vincent. Just the character exploration. It was just so touching and so well done. And I think a really nice exploration of that historical figure, not just as the artist, but as the person and sort of the demons that he wrestled with. The fact that they sort of made the alien villain also kind of misunderstood, and how it was not able to be seen by other people but Vincent. He was, just able to perceive things that other people were not. Yeah, it was just a really great episode. If I had to rank all of my favorite episodes from Doctor Who so far, please don't make me do that. That would be one of the ones. That would be, not just of Series 5, but of all of them. I really loved Amy's choice. In so many different aspects of it. I just loved it stylistically. I loved not really knowing which one was real. Like having to guess and having to suss that situation out. Is it a reliable narrator? Is it an unreliable narrator? What are we talking about? What is the truth? But that it played on something very real, which was her attachments to these two different people. And how it led her to really, just remind herself just how much Rory meant to her. I really loved that episode on many different levels. It was really great. I did love the conclusion of the series with the two-parter. Probably that first part even more so than the second part a little bit, but certainly they're both packaged together. It was very twisty, mind-bendy, timey-wimey. I loved it all. Can pick out little moments that I loved. Kind of in the same sense of last series, seeing all the companions come back for a curtain call and seeing everybody, and it was all positive. Sort of seeing all of the Doctor's enemies coming together to try and contain him. That was something else. Getting freaked out by the mannequins all over again. And sort of tying Rory into that as well. I thought the second part of it was really interesting concept of sort of rebooting the universe. I kind of wondered, would everything really have happened the same way? It did make me think, if the Doctor was not a part of that reboot, this is where I start to overanalyze. So if they reboot the universe, but the Doctor was sort of separate from that process, he only reappeared because Amy retained the memory of him, and therefore he was brought back in at the end. You kind of would have had that situation in turn left, wouldn't you? Like if the Doctor had not been around to intervene with all these things would have, the world would have turned out very differently. But there was so much going on in the series finale. I just I'm just going to accept it. It's fine. We'll accept this as fact. And it was just such a fun story and a really fitting ending to the first series. So those are my favorites. The Angels two-parter, the series finale two-parter, Vincent and Amy's Choice. Those were my ones that I just flipped my lid over. The ones that came very close to this category, and I be clear, I loved the majority of this series. In fact, the one that I probably connected to least was still really high up. So this was for me a really great series. I really loved the Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, which in the first part I wasn't sure if I was going to. I was going along with it, and I was like, oh, this is a good episode. It's all right. I wasn't really sure about it. I loved that it was a two-parter. Everything I said about the lizard people before holds. I really enjoyed them because they got so into them. And there were, some of them who were absolutely, they were just diehard warriors who were hell-bent on no humans whatsoever. And then you had sort of the scientists and then the politicians. You got a really good glimpse into their culture that had existed there. Those two come very close to being in the top tier. I couldn't even really tell you why they're not, but they're just on the edge. The Lodger. The Lodger was also up there just because it was so funny. And I think I even said the first time around I was just so kind of caught up in this sort of oddball, odd couple buddy thing that I wasn't completely following all the clues as to what that whole thing about the second floor was. But it was so enjoyable and a really good story. And I think that episode really showed off Matt Smith's comic timing as well. I knew from The Crown that he could do drama. Kind of similar, again, to my experience with Christopher Eccleston. I knew that he could do drama. But it's really nice to come in and see how funny he can be. And then just sort of some personal preferences for things. I did really enjoy The Beast Below. I sort of showcased Amy's qualities of perception. And just like I said, I'm a sucker for a vampire tale or a take on a vampire tale or shout outs to vampire tales. I did like The Vampires of Venice. It was fun. There were some aspects of it that were okay. I forget the character's name, but the father of the girl, he was, his story was fairly serious, and then they stuck him in Rory's SAG party t-shirt and kind of it's instant best friends with the Doctor. But it certainly was fun, and it certainly was instrumental in sort of setting things up for future plot lines. So, and even though the Christmas specials, they are their own thing, I have to include it because it was my first Christmas special with Matt Smith. I really loved it. I thought it was really beautiful and very bittersweet. I loved the play on A Christmas Carol and Dickens. And it is probably my favorite Christmas special after The Christmas Invasion. If Donna had not been the companion in Series 4, probably my favorite Christmas specials would have been Christmas Invasion, The Runaway Bride, and then A Christmas Carol. But with Donna having been included and me getting to spend so much more time with her, I would say favorite Christmas specials, Christmas Invasion, A Christmas Carol, The Runaway Bride. Followed by The Next Doctor and then Voyage of the Damned. All of which were very good. But those were just my personal preferences. I know that they're their own things, but, since I'm talking about Matt Smith, I thought I should include that one. Because that was really a great one. So I don't really have any episodes that were I'll pass. It wasn't my favorite or whatever. I did love the first episode that I saw Matt Smith in. It was the 11th Hour. I know I enjoyed that. I was so, busy trying to disengage from Tennant and trying to tell myself, no, this is the Doctor going forward. This is the Doctor. Watching that first episode, I think I had that little bit of distraction in my mind. So I haven't had time to do rewatches of any of these episodes yet, other than just, going over and editing and stuff. That one is probably up there as well. My memory of it is sort of complicated by my distraction that was going on. I think it was a good episode. I think I liked it. Probably the one I connected with least was Victory of the Daleks, and I have a thing with the Dalek episodes. I'm not really sure what it is. I love the very first Dalek episode, Dalek, of series 1. I think because, in part, is the first one I had ever met. And then because it was a singular Dalek, and it was a Dalek that had an issue. And that it had a mirror in the Doctor, and that they were each the last of their kind, allegedly. That is not true, but... So I really love that first Dalek episode, and the ones since, it all kind of depends. I think knowing that they come back constantly, all the time, it sort of raises my expectations, I think, for like, well, how are you going to explain that this time? And I know I should just accept it. They're gonna be back every single time. But I do think that creates a challenge for the writers in sort of, well, how do we bring them back? They do insist on vanquishing them often enough that you kind of have to come back with an explanation of how they're not vanquished after all, or how they would have been recreated, or what rebooted them this time. I think that raises my expectations of like what I expect from a Dalek episode. Like, how are you going to explain it this time? I can say what I really loved about Victory of the Daleks was before they were activated, before they gained their consciousness, I really loved the idea of sort of not a reprogrammed Dalek, but a Dalek that was not behaving like a Dalek. I mean, it was incredibly effective and creepy. It's horrific what the Daleks are capable of. I mean, they're capable of mass destruction and vaporizing things and people, and, you know, they have a lot of power. Their physical presence, to me, isn't always that frightening. They're not really frightening to me until they start doing the stuff, and then it's like, But seeing them sort of behave like, let me make you tea, and all that, I was like, what? Very creepy, very effective. I really like that. So maybe that's why, but I don't know what it is about me and Dalek episodes. I actually enjoy the Daleks. They're funny to me when they don't act like Daleks, when they're being atypical Daleks. And I think that most of the instances that we've had of Daleks appearing have been kind of that like variation. Like, how are they going to be a little different this time? So I do appreciate and understand sort of the challenge that the writers have. Now, having said that, I still really enjoyed the episode. It just, of all the ones that I saw this series, it probably is the one that I connected with the least. But certainly for a 13 plus 1, 14 episode series, I mean, that's a really good track record. This series is up there. The scorecard is high. All right, so those are my episodes. The sun is setting, so I should probably wrap this up. I don't think I can do a proper wrap up without sort of mentioning the shift in tone and the change of the showrunner. I don't think I'm going to get too analytical about it at this point, because certainly I've already started Series 6 and Stephen Moffat is going to be the showrunner for a while. I don't think I need to rehash what I had said about sort of how he weaves in sort of the series-long plots. I really enjoy that, but I've talked about that before. If I'm remembering correctly, he was showrunner for Sherlock at the same time as this, yes? That they overlapped? All right, I'm sorry, I had to turn on the light. That his duties as showrunner, that they overlapped. Not that they were filming at the exact same time, but during that era. Now, having seen all of Sherlock, I'm guessing most of you have. If you haven't, you might want to mute this little part just in case you don't want to be spoiled on it. I don't get too specific. It is interesting to note sort of this reinterpretation of the Doctor as Amy's imaginary friend, which I think is really cute, particularly from Amy's standpoint. But it's like it opens the door to be a little more fantastical or mystical. Because if you say alien, I mean, that's science fiction as well, which you can get very fantastical with, soft science fiction. It's sort of acknowledging, yes, he's an alien from another planet, We acknowledge that. That has not changed, but you sort of have this concept of him as sort of an imaginary friend. I think it can open things up for him being a little more fantastical, both in tone and with storytelling. And I bring up the Sherlock factor just because I was thinking the other day, the Doctor exhibits kind of Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock personality traits a little bit. Not completely. They're not exactly the same. They're not even that close to being the same. But there are a couple of similar characteristics. That biting tongue that he can have. He can be a little ignorant of sort of how humans are feeling around him. And I see little similarities between River Song and Irene Adler, and the relationship between Sherlock and Irene Adler and River Song and the Doctor. It's just a very similar vibe. Sort of the interpretation of the Doctor has changed ever so slightly. In addition to Matt Smith putting his own take on the Doctor, I think having Stephen Moffat as the showrunner has sort of allowed for a little different aspect to come through. But certainly just the other day, just this idea of the super confident femme fatale and sort of the befuddled, I don't know what's quite going on Doctor. Just, I don't know. They share a little similar dynamic to me. And it's just something I noticed having seen all of Sherlock. And we'll see if that continues to be my perception going forward. I do feel like it's a good thing that I have seen all of Sherlock. It is a tonal change, so I don't know how I would have reacted had I just seen the RTD era and then hit this and gone, what? Because it is a very specific way of storytelling that he has. I think the premiere episode, that bit where the Doctor was sort of trying to identify who was, had the phone and the camera work was doing the Sherlock thing, or the Sherlock thing was doing the Doctor Who thing. So, technical stuff like that, but just also tonally building the mystery of a plot, I think, there's a similarity. So I enjoyed that. I was already exposed to that from having seen all of Sherlock. And I think, just knowing Moffat's style of writing just from the previous Doctor Who episodes that he had done. So I guess I kind of knew what to expect. So it was a little smoother transition maybe than had I not been familiar with all that. So I think that's interesting. But certainly there were a lot of things about the show that are the same. The very quintessential Doctor Who. I love the new look of the TARDIS. And every time they go back, I don't know if they're adding new things all the time, but I keep seeing little details that I'm like, what? I really didn't notice about in the prior series. I think in the prior series, maybe they were just the little objects and things that he would grab were not like the kind of everyday objects that I'm seeing now, like a typewriter or I don't know. It's just really funny. And certainly the production values continue to be amazing. The music is still top notch. There are a whole bunch of moments with the music that I loved. I can't list them all. But in particular, the sequence when they are putting the Doctor into the Pandorica was really epic and has continued to stay with me. There have been a lot of really great musical moments that I enjoy. So I like having that consistency, even though I think the music does tend to change over this series just because it is a character in and of itself. It evolves with the characters too. So certainly there have been some really great moments in production and music and stuff. So obviously the sunset is telling me to wrap it up. I have talked for almost an hour. This review won't be an hour because I always try and edit all my ums and long pauses out. I usually save 10 or 15 minutes that way overall. But I will wrap it up here. I'm not going to do a house sorting this time. I think, I had to take the banner down. I'm trying to avoid the wrath of Kappa, which if you don't know what that is, just do a search for Kappa on YouTube and you'll see. I might reintroduce a sorting at a certain point. I think these characters are so new. You know, Amy and Rory are new. We keep seeing different aspects of River Song. And, you know, the take on the Doctor is a little different. So maybe sometime in the future I'll reintroduce another sorting. But I think for now, I'm going to skip that one and just say I really enjoyed Matt Smith's first series, Out as the Doctor. Enjoying Stephen Moffat's storytelling so far. It is interesting having gone this year and a half now as of this recording with Doctor Who reactions and reading comments and things and seeing sort of the RTD versus Moffat sort of thing build. I try not to pay too much attention to it, but I can't help but acknowledge that it's there. So I am going into the Moffat era with a totally open mind, knowing that I have enjoyed his stories in the past. I have enjoyed his other shows in the past. So I just really look forward to seeing what Series 6 has for me. I want to know more about River Song. Always want to know more about River Song, and I hope I get that. More of Matt Smith as the Doctor, see where Amy and Rory, how their relationship develops now that they're a married couple. Yeah, just looking forward to seeing how everything develops. It was a great Series 5. I was really happy with it. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching this with me. Let's go for Series 6, and I will see you for more reactions. Thanks. Bye.
I can produce magnificent quantities of lactic fluid.
She's not hungry, she's tired.
Remain calm while your life is extracted.
That will never stop being funny. I'm so freaked out. No, it made me cry. Oh! I'm totally lost.